All right. Happy New Year from the Law Office of Terrell Travis. We're grateful for the opportunity to come to you this first month of the year. It's been several years, and since we've had a legal lesson, where we invite you to like, to share, to invite, tag someone, post your comments and questions in the comments section on the social media platform that you're watching. And I wanted to share uh, 10 things that churches and pastors should be aware of for the new year. I was privileged to be invited to do a virtual presentation for a church organization. The presider reached out to me and said, "Could you come and just share with our pastors a couple things that they should be aware of for the upcoming year from a legal standpoint?" And so after making that presentation, I thought it would be beneficial to share that similar presentation with our audience at large. Once again, these legal lessons are brought to you by the Law Office of Terrell Travis, and they are for educational advertising purposes. It's not a substitute for consulting licensed attorney in your home state. We invite you to also connect with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, for legal lessons. Our legal lessons are also provided as a podcast on Apple and Spotify. We also invite you to visit our website, TerrellTravis.com. You can also email us at TerrellTravis@gmail.com, or call us or text us at area code 757-528-8529. If you desire a consultation, if you email us or call us, we will send you a link where you can schedule an appointment so we can discuss these things further. And so without further delay, I want to share with you 10 things that leaders should have in mind for the upcoming year. And it's been a while since I've been on StreamYard, so we're going to try to make this work. All right, New Year checklist for churches. And so trying to provide it to you so you can follow along with us. And once again, if you have any questions, you can put it in the comments, but you also can reach out to us. We always advise, don't just take what we say and run with it. But if you have a question or want greater clarity, or for us to expound or elaborate a little bit further, or to ask us maybe situational specific questions, always reach out to us. I'd rather that you reach out to us and get maximum clarity than to perhaps take something out of context and act on it in an improper way, and then it causes perhaps greater problems down the road. So, New Year legal checklist. January is by name. January, after the Greek goddess, I think Janus or Janos, two-faced goddess, where the idea is looking both to the future and the past. And so, from a legal standpoint, especially for churches, this is a great opportunity to kind of reflect on what we did in the previous year, but also to plan, strategize, implement policies for how we want to operate in the upcoming year, especially within this first month of the year, as a great opportunity to have that type of introspection and reflection, strategizing, and implementation. So, number one, anybody knows me, first and foremost, I stress the importance of churches having bylaws. Bylaws is how you run your house. It is how courts will hold you accountable, especially if there's any type of legal issue. The first thing that they're largely going to look at is your bylaws, as they put in writing how we operate, what we believe, and how we function. And so it's important for you to, one, locate those bylaws. Where are the current bylaws located? Who has a copy? Sometimes legal issues arise simply because no one can find the bylaws, or no one can find the current copy or the correct copy. They got different versions. And so are they updated current? And updating current in alignment is important because as times change, people change, churches change, the bylaws are not biblical in the sense that it's not scripture that can't be changed. Is not like the Ten Commandments etched in stone, but bylaws can be updated, and they should be updated to align with present practice. So one or two things should happen as we review the bylaws. Our church should be either complying with the bylaws, or we should revise the bylaws to reflect kind of how we do things today. So that alignment is important. It's like a car hitting enough bumps can get out of line. Sometimes a church can get out of line, and so it's one of two things. One, let's get back in line with how we said we would do things, or it might require an updating or revising of the bylaws to reflect present practices and policies. Also, in terms of updating, laws change. There's also as new situations arise, maybe we didn't have anything in the bylaws that addressed that before. We prayed about it, we researched it, we've looked at best practices from other churches and ministries, and we've kind of made this our policy, our practice going forward, but it's not recorded in the bylaws. So there's always going to be gaps, no matter how thorough you are, how much you've studied and reviewed. There's always going to be new situations. There's always going to be something that wasn't addressed. It wasn't addressed clearly. It didn't deal with this particular scenario. And so now that issue or situation has come to our attention, and perhaps we've developed a policy or strategy, or realized kind of where the gaps or omissions or discrepancies, or perhaps the misinterpretation comes in, and we've cleaned that up, make sure that those things are now added to the bylaws. Number two, compensation, especially as it relates to the senior pastor and staff. Compensation should be approved by your trustees or board of directors in a resolution, and as well as other staff members, whether it's your if other executive pastor, co-pastor, administrator, minister of music, musicians, janitorial staff. So anyone that is being compensated, this is an opportunity to review not only their salary, but their complete compensation package, which includes salary, which may include benefits, insurance, health insurance, life insurance, retirement, sick days, vacation days, mental health days, professional development, continuing education, reimbursement policy, vehicles, cell phones, uniforms, uniform cleaning. And so for the pastor specifically, it is mandatory that the pastor's compensation package be approved by the board of directors or the trustees, if not on an annual basis, maybe a biennial basis, triennial basis, maybe every other year, maybe every third year. It can't just be automatic percentage of the church's revenue. It can't just be something that's automatically locked in, but it's something that should be reviewed. Now, the percentage could be a goal, but it should still be based on, hey, how did we do financially the previous year? Now let's come up with perhaps what we're agreed to be the salary for the upcoming year. But once again, that needs to be a resolution. Even housing allowances. I get questions about housing allowance and things like that. That also needs to be in a resolution that is passed by the board of directors, trustees. Pastor may request a certain amount. The board may offer a certain amount. There's always room for negotiation. But in the end, there should be some documentation that we've looked at similarly situated pastors based on education, experience, perhaps significant accomplishments, achievements in the ministry, the growth of the ministry, the health of the ministry, perhaps even looking at other nonprofit organizations in the community, other professionals in the community. And based on our research and based on this package, this is what we agree to as a church. And it should be documented that the church or the board of directors or the trustees have approved that resolution as it relates to the compensation, especially of the senior pastor. All right, number 3, the issuing of W-2s or W-9s. Those who receive compensation from the church, whether they are an employee or whether they are an independent contractor. If you paid anybody, whether it's an honorarium as a guest speaker, someone who did the graphics, someone who hosts the website, someone who plays every week or as a substitute musician, someone who's on your administrative secretarial staff, pastoral team, it is important that you give them the right documentation. And so this is the time of year where W-2s and 1099s are issued. And so a W-2 goes to an employee, and that's not so much just a preference or an election. It's based on the person's position within the ministry. So how integral are they in the ministry? How much control does the ministry have over the individual per se, as well as how essential are they? So sometimes we kind of misclassify based on the amount that they get paid. You call it a love offering, call it a stipend, call it a salary, but the W-2 goes to someone who's an employee, not based on the amount that they get, but based on the role that they play in the ministry. The W-9 for independent contractors arguably is for anyone else that received compensation from the ministry. And the previous threshold was $600 over the course of a year. The new tax law now has upped that to $2,000. But once again, did you pay anybody? Not a reimbursement, but you paid somebody for doing something. And so if they don't get a W-2, they should get a W-9. And even if somehow they were misclassified last year, this is the time of year to evaluate or assess how they should be classified for the upcoming year. So when next January comes around, they're receiving the proper documentation. Number 4, review contracts. You have contracts for staff. If you're renting and you have a lease, if you have a mortgage, you may want to review the mortgage. Is this the year where is there a provision for a balloon payment? Can the mortgage company call in the loan? There's also opportunity maybe to review your utilities. Maybe there was discounts that have expired and not paying attention. Certain bills have escalated, and it might be an opportunity to go back and call and renegotiate on some of those utilities. So switch providers for some of those utilities, because often if you call them and request that some of those previous discounts be reinstated, or you're providing them that you're considering leaving and going to another carrier, they may also provide those discounts. So this is a good time to, once again, review contracts. And even when we talk about contracts, once again, similar to bylaws, if the contract didn't cover everything, maybe this year's contract should. And contracts are also good where there's been verbal agreement and there's nothing in writing. Once again, a lot of room for misinterpretation, misunderstanding. And so you may want to have those who have oral agreements to have written contracts, and then those who have written contracts to consider, does this contract cover everything that it needs to cover? And then once again, look at those leases, look at those debts, look at those mortgages, and look at those utilities. Number 5, review your insurance policy. Make sure that you have insurance, that it has not lapsed, that the insurance is adequate, and adequate varies on a number of factors, but making sure that you do have insurance that covers. You don't want to be in a situation where you didn't realize what your insurance did or did not cover once you file a claim. And so you might, once again, have to decide, maybe this insurance provider is not giving us adequate coverage, or they sent something in the mail or by email where they changed the coverage and somebody just tossed it in the trash, or the file cabinet didn't pay any attention to it. Are they giving you the best rate? So one, make sure you have insurance, and make sure the insurance provides adequate coverage. Whether it's fire, whether it's death, whether it's flood, whether it's for malpractice, whether it's some type of sexual assault or sexual misdeed. Does it cover those who work directly with youth? Does it cover food preparation? Do they reimburse you the fair market value of the things that have been damaged? Is there an inventory that if things were damaged by theft or by fire, do you have documentation of what the church even owns? The serial numbers, the model numbers, the year that it was acquired, the quantity. So once again, if there's a claim to be filed, hey, we have documentation of actually what we own, what was lost, what was damaged, as well as background checks. If they have not been done, are there certain ones that should undergo a background check? And is there a certain interval where perhaps a background check needs to be renewed for certain individuals? Number 6, updated membership records. It's important for a church to know who the current members of the ministry are. And this largely can only be done by not just tracking attendance, but by in some way taking roll. Track attendance, we know X amount of people were at church today. But when you say take roll, do we know specific names as to whether or not they were at church? Whether it's the ushers that do it, whether it's tribe leaders, whether it's certain ministers that are assigned to certain families, certain regions, certain home Bible study groups, life groups. Because what's important is if there is a particular vote that has to take place, whether it's on the new pastor, whether it's to merge, whether it's to acquire new property, sell property, maybe it's to dissolve, and your bylaws specify that members can vote. Well, if we don't have a clear sense of who the members are, then how do we control who does and who does not have the opportunity or the privilege to vote if there is a matter that is up for voting within the church? It's also just from a ministry standpoint, it's always good to know whether people are coming to church, whether it's life events, sickness, discouragement, whatever the case may be, that as a ministry in terms of closing the back door, that there's some type of monitoring of the back door, that there's some type of ministry devoted, to inreach and to making sure, hey, we haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. When does that get tripped? And so it's not that a person at the end of the year gets a letter to say, hey, your membership with the church has been revoked. Well, that should only happen after there's been, several attempts to try to reach out to the person to see kind of what's going on. And this person has clearly indicated that they no longer want to be a part of the ministry. And so therefore now the membership roster, if you will, can be purged or updated so that if something comes up this year that requires the members to vote, we know who are the eligible voters within the ministry. Number 7, contribution statements. The IRS has what is called the $250 rule. So by January 31st, those who have donated more than $250 to the ministry should receive a contribution statement acknowledging that gift. Now, most churches will acknowledge everybody, or they will acknowledge those who request a contribution statement. Everybody from a tax standpoint doesn't itemize. Some do, some don't. Some take the kind of the blanket deduction. And so the specifics doesn't matter as much, perhaps, as it did a couple of years ago, because the standard deduction has increased. But even as good practice, good stewardship, to acknowledge those who have financially contributed and supported the ministry, and perhaps to acknowledge that, but also perhaps even to share some of the highlights of what the ministry has done. That's good practice, good stewardship, but also from an IRS standpoint, it is a legal requirement for those who have contributed more than $250 during the course of the year to the ministry. Now, a lot of churches, they have electronic giving that makes it a little bit easier, but you still may have people who use various platforms, and you got to reconcile various platforms, or you still have those who are cash check contributors. And so once again, you can't just assume that they will have access to their own contribution statement. It should be provided by the church ministry that received that donation. Right. Number 9, if you're incorporated, make sure you file your annual reports with the state. Most states have some type of annual reporting requirement, and some of the states that previously did not have an annual filing requirement has one now. And so I've dealt with churches who've had their incorporation lapse because they had not filed an annual report. And the reason that they had not filed an annual report was because they were not aware that the law had changed that now requires them to file an annual report. Or perhaps the registered agent is no longer with the ministry. And so that person that was kind of responsible for it, is no longer with the ministry or has passed away. And so once again, there's a lapse in the incorporation. You also have situations where some states, it's always the same time of year around your incorporation anniversary. For other states, it's open season, like January to April. Everybody has the same open season. Some states will send repeated reminders, and some states do not send any reminder. So it's important to make sure that if you're required to submit an annual report to maintain your incorporation status, that report is submitted. And if your church has an actual a letter of recognition from the IRS, you have your separate 501c designation. If it's for the church or a separate entity, that entity also submits its annual incorporation annual report to the state for renewing that incorporation, but also submitting the 990 form to the IRS so that you don't lose that tax exempt status or cease to be in good standing. Failure to be in good standing, that you could go a period of years where you're not in good standing, and then after a period of time, in many states, you're actually revoked, which means you can't even get caught up with fees or submitting past reports. You essentially have to start over, and that creates a tremendous amount of legal liability because it's almost like an insurance policy. We incorporate to protect the members. Well, if that incorporation is not in good standing or has lapsed, has been revoked, or it's terminated, and there's a gap in terms of getting it reinstated, or there's a gap in terms of starting over, and then the name might not be available, and it gets very, very complicated. And if there's a lawsuit that perhaps is filed during that period of uncertainty, it can create an extra level of liability to that ministry because this happened while we were technically not incorporated, and whereas that incorporation would have provided a certain protection, that protection may be in jeopardy or compromised because, hey, now here's a lawsuit filed during the time we were not incorporated. Now what, right? And so perhaps you can get reinstated and you kind of have that back coverage, but if it's terminated or revoked and you're now having to restart, it can really be a headache. So make sure you have a designated person that does that. Make sure you're not paying late fees, and just make sure that somebody knows that this needs to be filed on this date around this time of year every year, and that those documents are submitted to the state. Number 9, which is similar for many states with the annual report, or if you are incorporated, but if you're not incorporated, make sure that the names of your directors and trustees are current, whether you are filing that with the state as an incorporated entity, or in many states where you have unincorporated churches, it's perhaps done at your local courthouse. And so once again, if there's an issue, a liability, we're going to look at what's listed with the state, or we're going to see what is listed with the courthouse. And if the names of those individuals that are listed with the state or with the court is not who the actual trustees, directors, or officers are, once again, that can cause a potential problem. Sometimes I've dealt with churches where they have not updated the trustees since they purchased the building, and that was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And those names are still on record. And so it's just important that if there are any changes, whether you have annual elections or people have term limits, people leave the ministry, people not reelected, reappointed, for whatever reason, people resign, that that list that is with the state or that list that is with your court is current and up to date, so that if there are any issues, this is the list that we go by. Not necessarily who you say in your church, but on the official record of where those things should be documented, that they are updated accordingly. And then lastly, number 10 is to review your succession plan and estate plan. Once again, estate plans can change up until the time the person is deceased or is incompetent. So as assets change, as family relationships change, as net income or worth, family wealth changes, the estate plan may change. Also, succession plan can change also, arguably up until the death or incapacity of that leader. And so does this succession plan that is in place today, is this the plan for now? Now, 5 years from now, things could change and they may require an update to that succession plan. And so this is a good opportunity. Do we have a succession plan? Does it reflect kind of either the person or the process based on present circumstances and conditions? If it does not, maybe the named successor is deceased. Maybe the named successor has left the ministry. Maybe the named successor has done something to disqualify. Maybe someone else has emerged as the ideal successor. So, or the plan has changed. The plan was to allow this person to oversee it. No, I think now we got a different person we want to oversee it or not oversee it. Maybe you were part of a Reformation or network and they were going to be involved. Now you're not with that Reformation and you don't want them involved, or whatever the case may be. Making sure that that succession plan is current and up to date is so very important. And so once again, I just wanted to come first of the year to be able to share what I consider to be 10 things that churches should consider when kind of the lay of the land for reviewing the last year, 2025, but also looking to the future in 2026. Kind of from a trustee standpoint, pastor standpoint, executive pastor, admin team, okay, what did we do right? Where did we mess up? Where did we drop the ball? Where do we need to tighten up? So that when we come together, perhaps the same time next year, we say, you know what, I was made aware, I've addressed those issues, I think we got things in place, but we're always on that continuous cycle of improvement. And so as composition of our congregations change, as the laws change, as the leadership of our ministries change, we always want to make sure that we're always reviewing these legal documents, the legal structure, legal polity, to make sure that we're good stewards from a legal standpoint for our ministry. So once again, we thank you for joining us today for this legal lesson. It's been about 3 years since we come on live for a legal lesson, but we invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. We'll also invite you to subscribe to our Legal Lessons podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you have any questions, if you would like to talk specifically about your ministry, maybe certain circumstances, or maybe you caught something that wasn't quite clear, we invite you to visit our website, fill out the contact form. You can email us directly for a question or to schedule an appointment. You can also call us on the telephone number to schedule an appointment, and we'll send you a link where you can schedule an appointment for telephone, in person, or virtual, whether it's just with you or with your team, so that we can perhaps provide advice on these various legal matters that we have shared with you today. Final disclaimer, this reminder, these legal lessons are for educational advertising purposes. and it's not a substitute for consulting a licensed attorney in your home state. Once again, we thank you and we pray God's blessings upon you and your ministry in 2026 and beyond. God bless.
Looking to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2022? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church laws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the law office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2022. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com.